Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of B2B sales.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And specifically how it's changing in a landscape where the buyer, well, the buyer holds all the cards,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, yeah.
It's really shifted, hasn't it?
Big time.
So the book that we're using as our compass for this journey is Deep Selling: How to Engage Buyers by Graham Hawkins and Mark Micallef.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it is. It's really insightful. And think of this deep dive as your cheat sheet, I guess, to understanding what it takes for businesses to thrive in this new era of sales.
Yeah, and it's really more than just relevant. I'd say it's crucial at this point.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm seeing firsthand how these old school sales tactics they're losing their edge.
Right.
So deep selling, I think, couldn't be more timely.
Totally agree. And the book kicks off by diving right into what they call the rise of the robots
Okay.
and how this intersects with Gen Z. Yeah, and one stat that really grabbed me was that ChatGPT hit 100 million active users
Wow.
in just 2 months.
That's fast.
It's insane, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just a novelty either. Like 70% of companies are exploring generative AI now, and 80% of Fortune 500 companies have already integrated it into their workflows.
Wow. That's that's a really telling sign that this is something that's here to stay.
Yeah, it's not just a fad.
Yeah.
So the fascinating thing is how this technology is already reshaping sales,
Right.
Like AI chatbots are becoming more and more common for handling initial inquiries.
Yeah.
And their capabilities are just getting more and more impressive. You know what I mean?
It's moving so fast.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up almost.
Right.
But it's exciting.
It is, yeah. And now where this gets really interesting, I think, is the connection the book draws between this technology and Gen Z. Yeah. So it highlights the statistic that 38% of people aged 18 to 30 reported having no sex in the past year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, before we all freak out, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's valuable to ask how this might relate to B2B sales.
Okay. Yeah.
Because this generation has grown up with screens and digital interaction, right?
Yeah, very true.
So what if this statistic is actually showing us a level of comfort
Right.
with AI as an intermediary?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even a preference for more asynchronous communication.
Interesting.
Right. So how could this reshape how vendors approach relationship building? I mean, that's the big question.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, how that preference for digital interaction will impact things like sales calls and product demos down the line.
Right. Yeah.
Are we headed towards a future where buyers are more comfortable closing deals through an AI-powered assistant rather than a face-to-face meeting?
It's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely an interesting question to think about because this all points to a really dramatic change in the buying journey itself.
Right.
And it's not even just AI either.
Right.
Like the internet and social media have completely flipped the script on how buyers make decisions.
Totally. And speaking of social media, the book highlights that 75% of B2B buyers are now using social media to research vendors. That's huge.
Yeah, that's a huge chunk of the market for sure.
Yeah, so buyers are coming to the table way more informed than ever before.
Right.
And here's where I think the power shift really hits home.
Yeah.
The book states that buyers complete 87% of their purchasing journey.
Wow.
Before they even speak to a salesperson.
That's amazing.
Imagine doing all your research, all your comparisons, practically making up your mind before a sales rep even knows you exist.
Right?
That's the world we live in now.
It is.
So vendors are facing a much higher bar now for engagement.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for them in practical terms?
Yeah.
How do they adapt to a buyer who's already done most of the legwork?
Well, it throws a real wrench in the old playbook of chasing after leads.
All right.
That's gone.
Yeah.
Like the old shallow approach of just pushing product features doesn't cut it anymore at all.
It's just not effective.
So what Harkins and Micallef call deep selling is all about shifting to a buyer-centric approach where vendors act as trusted advisors, helping buyers navigate this really complex landscape that they're facing.
Yeah, and the book uses some really great examples to illustrate this shift.
Yeah.
They mention NB aiming to slash their Tier 3 vendors by 50%.
Wow.
That's basically cutting their vendor list in half.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then Qantas consolidating their IT spend with just 9 Tier 1 vendors.
Wow.
these examples really show us that buyers are becoming much more discerning.
Yeah.
They're looking for quality over quantity, right?
Absolutely.
They want fewer but more strategic partnerships with vendors who truly understand their needs and offer tailored solutions.
Right. It's about those deep relationships, not just, surface level stuff.
Exactly. And that brings us to what the authors call the deep selling solution.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about manipulation or slick sales pitches.
No.
It's about genuinely understanding the buyer and building long-term relationships based on trust and value.
Right. Building that trust.
Yeah.
And it's about being that expert guide that helps buyers navigate this crazy world.
Yeah.
Where they're just bombarded with information and choices constantly.
Yeah. And the book actually includes a really helpful visual for this.
Okay.
It's a deep selling maturity model that outlines the stages of this transformation.
Cool.
Yeah. And the model actually outlines 4 stages.
Okay.
So you have shallow, emerging, exploring, and deep. And it's almost like a roadmap to help companies assess where they currently stand and what steps they need to take to become more buyer-centric.
Right.
I
like that.
Yeah. It's good.
Good way to visualize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So think of it less as like a checklist and more as a framework for continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Deep selling isn't a one-time fix.
No.
It's an ongoing process of understanding, adapting, and refining your approach to meet the ever-evolving needs of your buyers.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
You always got to be adapting and on your toes.
Absolutely. And so how does a company actually move through this maturity model?
Yeah, how do they do that?
Yeah, right? What are some of the concrete actions they can take to shift from that shallow end to the deep end of buyer engagement?
Well, I think it starts with acknowledging the shift in power.
Okay.
And embracing the need for change.
Yeah.
And the authors go into detail on a lot of really specific tactics.
Yeah.
Covering everything from how you structure your sales team to the technology you use to engage with buyers. It's a really holistic approach that requires a real shift in mindset across the entire organization.
That makes sense. It's not just about changing your sales pitch. It's about changing your entire approach to how you interact with buyers and build relationships.
Yeah, totally. It's like a whole new way of thinking about sales.
Exactly. And deep selling is about aligning your entire organization around the success of your buyers. Yeah. It's about making them feel heard, understood, and valued every step of the way.
Exactly.
That's a really big difference
it is.
From the old way of doing things.
Yeah.
And that's what really separates, I think, successful companies from those that struggle in this new sales landscape.
For sure.
It's about being a true partner, not just a vendor.
Yeah. That's the key takeaway.
And we'll delve deeper into some specific tactics and strategies in the next part of our deep dive, so stay with us.
Definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Should be good. We've talked about this big shift in B2B sales and how deep selling is the answer, but I'm curious what you've seen work, in real-world scenarios.
Okay, yeah.
Because the book offers lots of advice, but what are some examples of deep selling in action?
Well, one of the most effective techniques I've seen is using data and AI for what the book calls deep buyer understanding.
Oh, okay.
And it's like taking buyer personas to a whole new level.
Okay.
You're not just looking at demographics anymore.
Right.
You're analyzing their online behavior, how they engage with content, their connections, even sentiment on social media.
So you're really trying to get a holistic picture of who they are as a person.
Yeah, and the authors talk about LinkedIn Sales Navigator as being a key tool for that.
Yeah, that's a great tool.
It's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So let's say you discover that a prospect is really passionate about sustainable practices.
Okay.
Through Sales Navigator.
Okay.
Well armed with that knowledge, you can tailor your pitch to highlight your company's eco-friendly initiatives.
Right, so you're speaking their language.
Exactly. Yeah. That level of personalization goes a long way.
It makes a lot of sense.
It does. Yes. So it's not just about having the data.
Right.
It's about using it strategically to connect with the buyer on a deeper level.
Right. You got to make that connection.
And that's where sales enablement comes in.
Okay.
It's about providing your sales team with the right tools, the right training, and the right resources to leverage these insights effectively.
Okay.
And the book actually dedicates a whole chapter to this.
Wow.
Really emphasizing its importance in this new landscape.
So they see that as a crucial piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely.
And the authors make a point that many vendors invest heavily in technology, but they don't utilize it to its full potential.
It's true.
They use this analogy of having a Bugatti, but still taking the same old route.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's a good one, right?
It is.
So you need to change your mindset and your processes to really harness the power of these tools.
Yeah. You got to adapt.
Yeah, and this includes rethinking how your sales team is structured.
Right.
So they advocate for moving away from that traditional model.
Yeah.
Where salespeople try to handle the entire buyer journey.
Right.
Do you think that model is becoming obsolete?
I think it's definitely becoming less effective.
Okay.
In this new landscape. You need specialized roles.
Okay.
For things like demand generation, lead nurturing conversion, and customer success.
Right. So you'd have experts in attracting buyers, others focused on qualifying and nurturing them, and then your closers dedicated to converting those high-quality leads.
Precisely.
Okay.
And then your customer success team ensures that those buyers are getting value and staying engaged.
Okay.
It's all about having the right people with the right skills at each stage of the journey. It's a much more efficient and effective way to approach sales.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's about specialization in a way.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's about playing to people's strengths.
Right.
And having the right people in the right roles.
Yeah. And the authors also emphasize the importance of value-based selling.
Yeah.
And it seems to be like a core principle of deep selling.
It is.
Right.
It's a big part of it.
Moving away from pushing products and focusing on solving problems and quantifying the value delivered.
Exactly.
So how do you actually do that?
Well, the book goes into detail about different value-based selling models.
Okay.
For example, there's benefits-based selling.
Okay.
Where you focus on the specific benefits your product or service offers.
Right.
There's process optimization, where you help the buyer streamline their operations and improve efficiency.
Okay.
And then there's guaranteed results, where you essentially guarantee a specific outcome or return on investment.
Right. So you're putting some skin in the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about tailoring your approach to meet the buyer's specific needs and challenges.
Right. So understanding their pain points.
Exactly.
And then offering solutions that directly address those pain points.
Yeah.
Not just selling a product, but selling a solution.
I like that. Selling a solution.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
And I think one of the biggest challenges for companies adopting a deep selling approach is actually measuring the value they deliver.
That's true.
Right. It's not always easy.
You can't just rely on traditional sales metrics like revenue and number of deals closed.
Yeah.
You need to look at things like customer lifetime value, customer satisfaction, and the impact your solution has on the buyer's business.
Exactly. You got to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, and the book talks about Michelin as a great example.
Oh, yeah.
Of a company embracing this value-based selling approach.
Oh, okay.
So instead of just selling tires, they're helping their clients optimize fleet operations and reduce fuel consumption.
So they're looking at the whole picture.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
It is.
They're not just selling a product, they're selling a solution that delivers tangible value.
Yeah.
And they're using data and technology to do it.
Yeah. You know, tracking things like tire pressure and mileage to identify areas for improvement.
Smart. Yeah. Really smart.
And it's a perfect example of how deep selling can go beyond just a transactional relationship and become a true partnership.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not just a vendor, they're a trusted advisor helping their clients achieve their business goals.
And that's what buyers are looking for in today's market.
Yeah.
They don't want to be sold to. They want to be helped.
Yeah, they want to feel like you're on their team.
Yeah, exactly.
And they want to work with vendors who understand their challenges and can offer solutions that make a real difference.
Right. They want to see results.
Yeah. And so this all sounds great in theory.
Yeah.
But what about those vendors who are stuck in the shallow end of the pool?
Right.
How do they start making the shift to deep selling?
Well, it starts with acknowledging the need for change.
Okay.
And being willing to challenge the status quo.
Okay.
The book outlines a few key steps that companies can take.
Okay.
First, you need to get a clear understanding of your buyer's journey.
Right. You can't offer solutions if you don't understand the problems.
Exactly.
Okay.
You need to map out every stage of the journey.
Okay.
From the initial awareness phase to the final decision and beyond.
Okay.
And you need to understand the buyer's needs, motivations,
Yeah.
and challenges at each stage.
So you need to understand not just what they're buying, but why they're buying it.
Precisely.
Okay.
Once you have that deep understanding of the buyer's journey, then you can start to align your sales process and resources accordingly.
Okay.
This might mean creating specialized roles within your sales team, investing in new technologies, or developing new training programs for your salespeople.
Okay.
It's about creating a system that supports deep selling at every level.
So everything's working together.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that this is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
The buyer's journey is constantly evolving.
Right.
So you need to be constantly adapting and refining your approach.
It's about being agile and responsive to the changing needs of the market.
Exactly.
And the book talks about the importance of creating a buyer-obsessed culture.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, it's more than just a catchy phrase.
Okay.
It's about putting the buyer at the center of everything you do.
Okay.
It's about making sure that every decision you make,
Right,
from product development to marketing to sales,
okay,
is driven by a deep understanding of the buyer's needs and a genuine desire to help them succeed.
So it's not just the sales team's responsibility. It's a company-wide philosophy.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It needs to be embedded in the company's DNA.
Right.
And the book offers some practical tips
Okay.
for building this kind of culture.
Okay.
For example, you can use buyer feedback to inform product development. Or you can create customer advisory boards to get direct input from your target audience. You can also incentivize your employees to focus on customer success rather than just short-term sales goals.
Right, so changing the metrics in a way.
Exactly. It's about aligning everyone's interests with the success of the buyer.
And when you do that, everyone wins.
Exactly.
The buyer gets a better experience.
Yeah.
Your employees feel more engaged and motivated.
Right.
And your company achieves sustainable growth.
Exactly. It's a win-win-win scenario.
It sounds like a pretty compelling argument for adopting a deep selling approach.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that it's not a magic bullet.
Right.
It takes time, effort, and a willingness to embrace change.
Yeah, you got to put in the work.
You do.
Yeah.
But the rewards are well worth it.
So this has been incredibly insightful.
Yeah, it has.
And I'm sure our listeners are already thinking about how to apply these ideas to their own businesses.
I hope so.
But before we wrap up, I'm curious about your thoughts on one particular aspect of deep selling.
Okay.
The book mentions the importance of moving away from traditional sales metrics, like quotas and commissions.
Okay.
And focusing more on rewarding behaviors that drive buyer success. Do you think that's a realistic strategy?
Well, it's definitely a bold move.
Yeah.
And it might not be the right fit for every organization.
Right.
But I think it's an important conversation to have.
Yeah.
When you think about it, quotas and commissions can sometimes incentivize salespeople to prioritize their own short-term gains over the long-term success of the buyer.
Right. So it creates a conflict of interest in a way.
It can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you saying that traditional sales incentives can actually be detrimental?
Potentially.
To building those long-term relationships that are so crucial to depth selling?
They can definitely create tension. I've seen situations where salespeople have been pressured to close deals that weren't necessarily in the best interest of the buyer.
Yeah.
And that can damage trust and hurt the relationship in the long run.
Right, because you're violating that trust.
Exactly. You're breaking that trust.
So what's the alternative?
Yeah.
How do you incentivize salespeople to focus on buyer success without sacrificing sales performance?
Well, it's about shifting the focus from individual sales goals to team-based goals. It's about rewarding collaboration, knowledge sharing, and a customer-centric approach.
So it's about creating a culture where everyone is working together to achieve the same goal, the success of the buyer.
Exactly. And that's what deep selling is all about.
Yeah.
It's about creating a win-win scenario for both the buyer and the seller.
This has been an incredibly insightful discussion.
It has.
And I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear more about how they can implement these deep selling strategies in their own businesses.
I hope so.
We'll delve deeper into that in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive on deep selling.
Yeah, we have, haven't we?
It's been a really interesting discussion.
Yeah.
We've explored this shift in power towards the buyer, and you know how this new landscape requires vendors to adapt their strategies?
Right. They've really got to change the way they think about things.
And deep selling, as Hawkins and McCall describe it, seems to be the solution to thriving in this new reality.
Yeah, it really does seem like the way forward.
So it's about understanding your buyers on a deeper level, right?
Right, exactly.
Moving away from those surface-level demographics.
Yeah, those aren't enough anymore.
And really digging into their needs, goals, and challenges.
You got to go deeper.
Yeah, and then using those insights to tailor your solutions focusing on solving problems rather than just pushing products.
Absolutely. It's about being a partner, not just a salesperson.
It's about moving away from the transactional and towards the relational, building those long-term partnerships based on trust and mutual benefit.
Right. Creating those win-win situations.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about ditching that old playbook of shallow selling and embracing a more strategic buyer-centric approach.
Yeah, you got to throw that old playbook out the window.
And it's not just a sales tactic.
Oh, it's bigger than that.
It's a company-wide philosophy.
It's a mindset shift.
Right, and the authors call it building a buyer-obsessed culture.
Yeah, I love that term.
Where every decision you make is driven by a deep understanding of the buyer's needs and a genuine desire to help them succeed.
You got to put the buyer at the center of everything.
Exactly.
It's all about them.
Yeah, so we've discussed a lot of tactical advice from the book.
We have.
From leveraging data and AI to rethinking sales team structure and compensation models.
Like a lot to take in.
It is. But what I think is most valuable for our listeners is understanding the core principles of depth selling.
The foundation.
Yeah, because once you have that, the tactics will follow.
Right.
So it's about moving beyond the surface and really getting to know your buyer.
Yeah, like really getting to know them as people.
It's about asking the right questions, listening intently, and being genuinely curious about their challenges.
It's about building that rapport.
Yeah, and it's about being a trusted advisor, a partner, a guide.
It's about being more than just a vendor.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
okay,
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay, I like it.
How can you apply these principles to your own unique situation?
That's the question.
Yeah, what's one small step you can take this week?
Okay.
To move towards a more deep selling approach?
Love it.
Yeah, it could be as simple as scheduling a call with a buyer and asking them about their biggest pain points.
Yeah, just start a conversation.
Or revisiting your buyer personas and making sure they reflect a deep understanding of your target audience.
Yeah, make sure those personas are really accurate.
Or maybe exploring a new technology that can help you gather and analyze buyer insights.
There are so many great tools out there.
There are.
It's amazing.
That the key is to take action.
You got to do something.
Yeah, the future of sales is about building deeper connections and delivering real value.
And that starts with understanding your buyers on a deeper level.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope this deep dive into deep selling has given you some actionable insights.
Yeah, I hope so too.
To transform your approach to B2B sales.
It's time to start selling deep.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing,
and keep selling deep.
See you next time, everyone.